Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex, and my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today, we're talking Micah Parsons, star linebacker out of Penn State, and the idea that maybe, just maybe, he could fall to the 11th overall pick. I've done a couple of mock draft simulators, and there have been times where he does drop to 11, and that's really exciting because for the Giants, we do have Blake Martinez, but that second linebacker spot has been a problem. They've used Tay Crowder, Devontae Downs, David Mayo, kind of rotating guys there, and I just don't think we have that surefire starter in that number 2 linebacker spot. But if you get a guy like Micah Parsons, not only is he really a generational linebacker, but he is an impact player, immediately an impact player for the Giants and that defense. He's a guy you can actually build around. Having Blake Martinez and Micah Parsons as your 2 linebackers, that arguably is the best linebacking duo in the NFL. So before we dive into Parsons, what he offers and what he would bring to the Giants, and maybe some scenarios that if he fell to 11, how do you really allocate that pick? Anthony, my friend, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I don't know. It's Angry Tony today. Just kidding. No, I'm fine. A little sore. Hit the triceps really hard yesterday. If you really want to know how I'm doing. Anybody got some good workout plans, let me know in the comments section. Trying to get big in the gym right now. But excited, just inspired watching some Micah Parsons film. I'm like, damn, this dude is ripped. I got to set my game up, man. I got to get in the gym. But yeah, Micah Parsons is a beast. So I'm excited to talk about him and, a couple other prospects and see where this takes us.
Yeah, I think Anthony's eating nails for breakfast these days. Raw eggs and nails in the blender. He's gone through like 6 blenders.
With a sledgehammer, just cause.
He's gone through like 7 blenders already. Those nails really just don't do it.
Always keep the sledgehammer in hand when people walk up. I'm just like, all right, talk to the sledgehammer, don't talk to me.
I don't even know what that means, but it's kind of, I'm just picturing you with a sledgehammer, and I just don't feel intimidated.
See, it's kind of like an inside joke. Like, someone else who listens to this podcast will know it, but the 99% of people who do won't get it, but someone will, and they'll be like, Tony with the sledgehammer.
Oh, okay. Well, you can do your sledgehammer things. We're talking Micah Parsons today, okay? Okay, Anthony, we're talking Micah Parsons and what he would bring to the Giants. Parsons, my friends, we all know, we've heard the stories, we've heard just how fantastic of an athlete he really is. He's a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, so we already know he has the tangible traits, and he's a leader. He's a pure, surefire leader on defense. People rally around him. He makes impact plays. He creates turnovers. He is the guy you want. And I'm going to be posting clips throughout this video on YouTube. So, as you're watching, I'm going to be putting, just some highlights and all 22 film that you guys can watch and really see what he's capable of doing. Some of it doesn't show impact major plays, but it shows his hustle. It shows his ability to fill gaps in the running game. Also, his reaction timing and dropping back as a pass defender, in zone coverage and whatnot. He is really, really athletic, really quick. His reaction timing is some of the best I've ever seen from a linebacker. And, there's a lot of analysts out there saying, this guy, if he doesn't go top 10, it would be the biggest mistake for all those teams that pass on him. And, Anthony, this is where I want to propose kind of a situation for you. If the Giants are at 11, they're sitting there pretty, they're saying, we're going to get the best player available, or maybe we want an offensive weapon. Let's say on the board they have Jaylen Waddle, Micah Parsons, Patrick Surtain, and Kyle Pitts. Who are you taking there and why?
That's pretty tough because, the Giants need to upgrade their offense, but we got to see what happens in free agency, first of all. It's kind of hard to make mock drafts right now and predict certain players going to certain teams because, a lot of the times these teams are drafting because they have a need, right? Like the Giants have a clear need at wide receiver. But if they somehow sign Kenny Golladay, they don't have that clear need at wide receiver, and then they can go with a guy like Micah Parsons. And if Micah Parsons is there, that's a guy who's really going to, change your defense. He's athletic, he's strong, and he can blitz, and he's an off-ball linebacker, but he can blitz like an edge rusher. Like, the dude's pretty special. He really can do a lot of things for your defense. He's very versatile. Last year, a lot of Giants fans, myself included, were very high on Isaiah Simmons, thought he was a really intriguing prospect, can line up all over the place, super athletic, great in coverage. Maybe Micah Parsons isn't that, but he is more of that pure linebacker, that really good linebacker you put in the middle of the defense, and he really just holds it down, and he makes a lot of plays at each level. Good run defender, breaks up blocks really well, just bulldozes through people, and a really good blitzer, like I mentioned. So, with those certain players, Patrick Surtain, I don't know. I've read a few things about Surtain that got me a little like, because I can make my own analysis, but I do like to read, professional analysis as well, because I'm not professional. I'm trying to get there one day, but I'm not there right now. But, guys like the draft scout, Matt Miller, he's like, well, I don't really think there's any round 1 cornerbacks in this draft. I feel like all of them are really high tier round 2s. And I'm like, well, if you kind of look at it, maybe he's right. Maybe Patrick Surtain really isn't worthy of a top 11 pick in the draft. Maybe if you're picking in this back end of the round, Patrick Surtain's a good idea, but I think he's going to get overdrafted just based on positional need. Teams need cornerbacks. Cornerback is a very important position, and it could force some corners to go a little earlier than they should, and I think that happens pretty often in the NFL. So I'm a little uneasy about Patrick Surtain. And then Kyle Pitts, we watched him. I think you were probably a little more impressed than I was. I wasn't that crazy about Kyle Pitts when we did our film breakdown. I like him. I think he's really talented and a good prospect, but I'm not exactly sure if I would love to see him in the Giants blue. I think that maybe he wouldn't be a scheme fit. I don't know. Kyle Pitts, I'm a little uneasy on. I got to keep diving deeper. But Jaylen Waddle, that's where it gets interesting for me. Jaylen Waddle or Micah Parsons, because I'm a big fan of Jaylen Waddle. A lot of Giants fans like to say, why would we draft Jaylen Waddle? He's a slot receiver. We already have a slot receiver in Sterling Shepard. Okay, neither of those things are true. Jaylen Waddle played a lot of Z receiver, which is outside. He's just off of the line of scrimmage. So, yeah, maybe he's not the big body X receiver. He's going to be right on the line of scrimmage going up against press coverage. But if you don't want him against press coverage, don't put him against press coverage. Make him the Z receiver, give him a 1 to 2 yard cushion, and then let him get a free release off the line of scrimmage. That's where he does all of his damage in college, and that's where he's going to do his damage once he gets to the NFL, because he's a guy who can run really good routes. He's, going to be one of the fastest players in the NFL as soon as he gets to the NFL. He's just a lightning in a bottle. He's so fast. And then he's really got the ability to make some tough catches. He kind of goes up there. He has the occasional drop. I've noticed that. Sometimes he has an occasional drop. But he also has an occasional Randy Moss play in a 5'10" body or whatever he is. He's like not big, but he can go up there and play big. So Jaylen Waddle is a really explosive, dynamic offensive weapon, and I'm very intrigued by him. So then it's kind of at the point where you're like, do you really want that explosive offensive weapon, or do you want that defensive weapon, that playmaker on defense? And we have a couple of those already. We have Leonard Williams, if he resigns. We have James Bradbury, he's excellent. We have Jabril Peppers, who's very dynamic and does a lot of things. But we don't really have one of those in the linebacker position. We have a great player in Blake Martinez. He's really good, but I think he's very good because he's in a very defined role. He plays one defined role. They barely put him back in coverage because they know it's not his strength. They like to blitz him occasionally. He's very good at those things. But maybe if you could get a guy that can really expand and start playing different roles in the defense, then you'll see Blake Martinez play even better alongside another really good linebacker. Because as you mentioned, we had a little bit of a revolving door in that position this year and last year. So I'd like to really see them solidify that front seven. And so the Micah Parsons versus Jaylen Waddle debate, I feel like you can't go wrong. Even if the Giants do sign a wide receiver, you still can't go wrong, because if you can pair a wide receiver with Waddle, then your receiving core is just nasty overnight. So either way, can't go wrong. And I'm really excited about both of those prospects and ready to dive into them once we start hitting the film room a little more, and then we can really, really dive into these prospects and get some excitement heading into April.
Absolutely. I mean, Jaylen Waddle, that's my real debate. Kyle Pitts, I have my worries, and I try to sell every player, right? That's kind of what I've been trying to do this offseason specifically. I'm trying to make a selling point for Kyle Pitts, for Jaylen Waddle, for anyone the Giants could possibly be mocked with, maybe even Gregory Rousseau or Kwity Paye. These are all guys I want you to think, this is the right guy, but we also have to go through the negatives. Kyle Pitts, I'm terrified that he's not a good enough blocker, and I'm terrified that Jason Garrett doesn't know how to use a player like that. Those are the two things that I do not trust when it comes to Kyle Pitts. He is such a diverse player. You need an offensive coordinator who can really maximize those talents. I don't think the Giants have that. That's why I'm a little skeptical on Kyle Pitts, but when it comes to the Jaylen Waddle and the Micah Parsons debate, that's a more interesting one in my opinion, because Jaylen Waddle was expected to be the Alabama primary pass catcher. Devonta Smith ended up having one of the best college seasons for a wide receiver in history. But Jaylen Waddle had a fantastic year before he went down. Over 6 games, he had like 600 yards, a couple touchdowns. And he has the Tyreek Hill mentality, right? And really his skill set. Really speedy receiver. He can do those end arounds. He can play out of the backfield. He's really good in that Z receiver spot where he can play out of the, on drag routes. He can burn people with his speed. I posted a clip on Twitter earlier. He catches a comeback route, and he literally just torches the entire defense. He runs all the way to the opposite side of the field, beats the guys that have better angles than him, beats them to the sideline, and then races to the end zone. The guy is an incredible talent. Passing on him would definitely hurt because of how much, how many big plays he does make. But then you look at Micah Parsons. He's an impact player. He's a guy you build a defense around. And if the Giants go out in free agency and say, okay, you know what, let's let Dalvin Tomlinson walk, maybe cut some dead weight, open some cap up, get the best wide receiver we can possibly afford on the market, and then use that number 1 pick on Micah Parsons. Let's say, theoretically, he drops to 11 here. They use that pick on Micah Parsons. Now you have one of the best linebacking prospects, an arguably generational linebacking prospect, better than Devin Bush, better than Devin White, better than Leighton Vander Esch, better than any of those guys. So when you add a guy like him to your defense, especially next to a guy like Blake Martinez, now you have 2 linebackers who can do so many different things. Because Micah Parsons entered college as a pass rusher. He did not come in as a linebacker. He was also a running back in high school. The guy is a freak athlete. And, utilizing him as maybe like a stacked outside linebacker and really just using him as a pass rusher early on, but also dropping him back into zone coverage and letting him use those instincts to stop the run and also, just fill holes with his athleticism. I think he is capable of being that key cog for the Giants defense that Patrick Graham loves to use. He loves players that are diverse. He loves players that bring many different skill sets and they can play multiple different positions. He can play off-ball linebacker. He can pass rush. He can stop the run at a high level. He can drop back into coverage. What more can you ask from a guy like Micah Parsons? That is what he brings to your team. And if you're watching the clips throughout this video, you're going to see he makes some of the best plays in the backfield I've ever seen. He has some of the best linebacking film I have ever seen. Hands down. Just makes you stand. It makes you sit up in your chair watching him and what he's capable of doing. I'll read you some of his statistics. He did opt out of the 2020 season, so the last stuff we have is from 2019. He had 109 total tackles, right? 109 total tackles for Penn State at the collegiate level. That's absurd. He had 14 tackles for a loss and 5 sacks, right? That's incredible. He also forced 4 fumbles, and he had 5 passes defended. He ranked 6th in solo tackles. He ranked 2nd in assisted tackles, 3rd in total tackles, and 10th in tackles for a loss. He was top 10 in every important defensive statistical category, okay? That is freaking insane. He is a player that you add to the defense, and he makes a difference overnight. He is an impact player, someone that the Giants would love to have, I'm sure. And if he drops to 11, I simply don't think you can pass on him. I love Jaylen Waddle, but I don't think he's a generational talent. I think he's capable of being a number 1 wideout and really using him in multiple alignments and really creating design plays around him like Tyreek Hill style. But Micah Parsons is so instinctual and so naturally gifted. He makes that defense a top 5 defense overnight. That's the big thing for me. But Jaylen Waddle, again, it's a tough decision to make. Guys, in the YouTube comment section, please let us know who you think would be a better selection there. Micah Parsons or Jaylen Waddle or Kyle Pitts, whoever it might be. This is an interesting scenario because, again, I've done a couple of mock drafts, a couple of simulations, and every single one has Micah Parsons dropping to 11 or if not deeper, which is crazy to me because he has the talent to be it's crazy. It is. So,
Yeah,
what else?
I'll throw out some stuff here. This is from Pro Football Focus. This is their words, not mine. The bottom line on Micah Parsons. This was written in the preseason, so this is their preseason draft guide. They're going to update this, but this is what they had: NFL draft projection top 5, saying he's a top 5 talent. They said he's got throwback size with modern athleticism. Even without a 2020 season, he's the best linebacker prospect PFF has ever seen. And that's even when they had Isaiah Simmons last year, and PFF was really into Isaiah Simmons last year. That's the thing with Micah Parsons, man. He is just like huge, 6'3", 244. He's a big guy, but he's very athletic, very fast, and he really can do a lot of things. He's not the best in coverage, he's not that coverage guy, but he's at least average in coverage, and this is what I'm going to get into here. I think I have a pretty good pro comp for Micah Parsons in a way. He kind of reminds me of Anthony Barr. Anthony Barr is a linebacker, an off-ball linebacker for the Minnesota Vikings, but in college, Anthony Barr really played more edge rusher. And he was a really good pass rusher, but his size and athleticism, everything, they were like, okay, let's just move him to the off-ball linebacker position. That's where he's played. He's gotten paid a lot of money to play that position. But realistically, I think that's similar to Micah Parsons in the way that he has all those edge rusher pass rushing moves. He's a really good pass rusher, super advanced in that way. And I think if you wanted to put him at edge in the NFL, you absolutely could. But just because of his body size and the other things that he does in the running game and everything like that, he could really realistically step in and just be one of the best linebackers in the NFL within his first 2 seasons because of those things. Added on with the fact that he's an edge rusher. And another thing about that is, if he bottoms out at linebacker, if some reason he's a bust, he's terrible at the linebacker position, he's got the pass rush moves, just move him out to edge. It's like drafting 2 positions at once. You have a backup plan built in with Micah Parsons, even though I don't even think you have to get to that backup plan. He's a very talented player, and I'm a big Jaylen Waddle fan as well, but I don't know, man. It's just, I don't know. See, that's the thing, right? I think that you can make the argument Micah Parsons is a top 5 talent, right? I don't think you can make that argument for Jaylen Waddle. I don't think he's a top 5 generational talent. I don't even know if I'd call, you could actually argue Micah Parsons is a generational talent based on his size with, he's got such throwback size, as they said, with modern athleticism. So you can say that's generational. And maybe you could say generational speed out of Jaylen Waddle, but I don't know. Generational wide receivers are rare. There's a lot of really good wide receivers, but there's only been a few generational ones, like Larry Fitzgerald, Calvin Johnson. You knew as soon as those guys got in the league, they were going to be the best receiver in the league for the next 10 years. You don't know that with Jaylen Waddle. You don't know that really with any of the guys at the top of this year's draft class. You have an idea that they could be that, but that's pretty much the argument. I think that when you look at Micah Parsons, he legitimately, you can argue, is a top 5 talent in any draft class. I don't know if you can argue that with Jaylen Waddle. He's not even projected to go as the first receiver on the board. He's the 3rd. So I think, honestly, to me, this is tough for me. I really like Waddle, but I think in that scenario, I do go Micah Parsons at 11. I think if he actually does fall to 11, I'm still skeptical of that. I don't think he will. I think a team is going to fall in love with him. They're going to look at the tape. There's a lot to like. He really is just phenomenal. He's textbook tackler, and like I mentioned, the pass rush moves are insane for a linebacker. Like, he should not be able to do the things that he does, but he does them. So he's really special talent. So I think if he's there at 11, the Giants, just imagine Patrick Graham getting a talent like this to plug and play all over that defense, move him around, because we know Patrick Graham likes to move guys around. We've seen Leonard Williams line up at 0 tech, 3 tech, 2 tech, 5 tech, all over the place, even a stand-up edge rusher. We know he's going to do some fun things with Micah Parsons. Put him at 0 tech sometimes. Let him pass rush up the middle. Put him on the edge. Have him be the off-ball linebacker opposite of Blake Martinez. We know Patrick Graham would do a lot of fun things with Micah Parsons. So I would actually really love to see that happen, And I guess this is really predicated on whether or not we fix the wide receiver position in free agency. If not, we might be forced to draft for need, and we might have to go wide receiver with the 11th pick. But if we can take Micah Parsons, I would love to take Micah Parsons. He is such a really just a rare talent. And then maybe you can just look to get a wide receiver in round 2. This is a nice draft class for wide receivers. You can't forget people like Chase Claypool. They go in the middle rounds, like Michael Pittman. I'm a big Michael Pittman fan. I think he's a wide receiver too ultimately throughout his career, but he's a middle round guy. And Justin Jefferson was like the 22nd pick, right? And this year's draft class, maybe you get your Justin Jefferson at the top of round 2. It's possible. So there's some names that I could even throw out there. Rashad Bateman, Armon Ross St. Brown. There's a few guys. Terrace Marshall, I know that's your guy, Alex. So there's a few guys to look at in terms of wide receiver position. So maybe the Giants really can't afford to just take this arguably generational linebacker prospect with the 11th pick.
Yeah, and we know the Giants don't like to allocate big picks toward linebackers. They haven't done it in a very, very long time. So that's one thing, maybe
since
it's time.
Since the 80s. It's been a long time.
Since the 80s. And we know, and when they usually do it, they usually get a guy that's worth it. A guy that pans out, a guy that really makes an impact on the field. And, I do actually think he has the size to be that outside linebacker if they wanted to use him in that way, in addition to just a regular off-ball linebacker. He is 6'2", 245 pounds. I'm looking at Marcus Golden, 10 sacks for the Giants, 2019. He's 6'3", 260. He's not that much bigger than Micah Parsons, and he's half the athlete that Micah Parsons is. So with probably even worse pass rush moves. Micah Parsons is such a refined talent, and like I said, he entered college as a pass rusher at outside linebacker. He has that skill set to be just a phenomenal player. And when you think about the way that they can use him and the diversity he brings to your defense, think about this past season with the Giants, right? They didn't have a single outside linebacker. They were bringing in Jabal Sher. They're using 7th-round picks and Carter Coughlin. Lorenzo Carter, Ocean Ximenez, were ruled out for the season, IR. You have a guy like Micah Parsons, you say, okay, our outside linebacker position's really shredded right now. We don't have the pass rusher. We're going to just put you at outside linebacker, and he's going to dominate. He's going to win matchups. He's going to collect sacks, and he's going to make plays. That's what you have in a player like Micah Parsons who can play off-ball linebacker. But if you needed him to make that transition, if you needed him to supplement an injury, he can do it with ease. You know what I mean? Like, that's what you get in a player like that, and it is so valuable. We know how pricey pass rushers can get, and we know how pricey linebackers can get. When you have a guy that can do both, not only is Patrick Graham going to scheme the hell out of a guy like that, get him into 1v1 matchups, get him into positions to succeed, it boosts his value. He's a player that you're paying $6-7 million a year, but his value is actually at $15-20 million a year. So, you don't pass on that type of value. Wide receivers usually take a couple of years to really gain their full head of steam and really establish themselves in the NFL. There's a couple that really have a great careers right off the bat, but it takes usually a year to get adapted to the NFL, and that's why I think free agency is a better scenario for the Giants to get a wide receiver. But round 2, like Anthony stated, there's a ton of great prospects in round 2. Rashad Bateman, obviously. Chavis Marshall is my guy from LSU. I think he's really that deep ball threat. He can make those plays. So I'm excited about Micah Parsons. If he drops, I think you take him hands down. Even if Jaylen Waddle, Kyle Pitts, Patrick Surtain are on the board, he's just too good of a prospect to pass up. Would you agree with that, Anthony?
I do agree with that. If Micah Parsons actually does fall to 11, I think he's too good to pass up. I mentioned it. He's a top 5 talent. So if you can get him at 11, you got to do it. And yeah, I'll throw out a few wide receiver prospects. This was a quote from Dane Brugler from The Athletic on Twitter. He said, in the second round, LSU's wide receiver Terrence Marshall could be a target if the Giants want size at wide receiver. If they want a savvy route runner with average physical and athletic traits, Rashad Bateman makes a lot of sense. If they want to add an explosive option, Purdue's Rondale Moore or Ole Miss's Elijah Moore makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of options for the Giants in round 2. And it's kind of pick your poison. What do you want your wide receiver to be? Do you want your big body guy and go up there and make those catches? Maybe you go Terrace Marshall. Do you want your quick route runner who gets separation? Maybe you go with Rashad Bateman. Or do you want a guy who's athletic and will just take the top off of a defense and you go with Rondale Moore or Elijah Moore? There's a lot of options for the Giants. It's not necessarily, as I agree, I think the Giants should lean towards getting a wide receiver as early as possible, getting one as talented as possible. If that's round 1 or if that's free agency, they should do that. But as a nice backup plan, there's quite a few in the second round of the NFL draft. So don't sweat it too much. If Micah Parsons is on the board, and let's say Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith are off the board. Let's assume that. But Micah Parsons is on the board and Jaylen Waddle is on the board. Don't worry if they don't force their hand and go with Jaylen Waddle, especially if they don't think he's a big scheme fit. They don't really know how they're going to use him. They're not going to force that. They're just going to go with the generational linebacker talent and just fix that defense up. The defense is already really good. It can just get even better. And then we can go from there, find that wide receiver in round 2. There's quite a few options. This is another really rich wide receiver class, like last year. But the thing with this one is I feel like there's a lot more round 2 prospects than there were last year. This is a lot of depth in this class, and that's really exciting. Might not be as top heavy as the last one. The last one had 3 wide receivers, instantly were just going to be studs. And maybe we kind of have that with these 3 this year, but I feel like it's just this draft class might even be better than the last one in terms of wide receivers, which is pretty shocking because the last one was historically good in terms of prospects coming out of college. So this is going to be exciting. I think the Giants don't sweat it if they don't go wide receiver in round 1. I think in round 2, maybe even if they get risky enough and they find one in round 3, I think they'll find one in the draft if they don't get one in free agency. So if Micah Parsons is there, I think I absolutely would take him, and I think a lot of fans will agree with me on that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you go Parsons as well. Obviously, second round, I think, has to be a wide receiver. I would also love the Giants to find a speed receiver in the later rounds. Don't go the Derek Dillon undrafted free agent route because more often than not, those guys aren't going to pan out, those undrafted free agents. They do sometimes, but for the reality of Tyreek Hill was a 5th-round pick, you look at, speed guys in later rounds, just try and take a shot at one of them. Those you can always develop around speed and natural athleticism. Fundamentals you sometimes can get lost, but natural athleticism is something you can work with. That's where the potential is. That's why the later rounds are a great place to allocate picks toward guys with high upside, high athleticism. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Micah Parsons is the truth, generational talent. We'll do a film review on him soon enough. Obviously, I'm going to scatter some videos throughout this video. If you haven't watched them already, go check it out. So, as always, appreciate all the support, guys. YouTube channel's growing. Everything's going well. Hope you guys are safe, healthy, and doing well. And we will catch you guys on the next one.